Hello, and welcome to Insurance Agents Talk Shop. I'm your host, Doug Coombs, Chief Marketing Officer at SIAA. Today's episode is a deep dive into aggregators, clusters, and networks. I'd like to introduce my guest, Jack Calabrese, SIAA's Senior Vice President of National Recruiting and Sales. Hey, Jack.
Hey, Doug, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Hey, this is your opportunity to correct me on the pronunciation of your last name.
You know what? Even in my own family, we haven't been able to agree whether it's Calabrese or Calabrese. Long-standing fight that has gone back generations.
So we're safe either way.
Yeah, Calabrese is fine. We're a flexible people.
Well, I appreciate that. Okay, so my thought is that in your role as Senior Vice President of Recruiting and Sales, you've likely encountered people using the terms aggregators, clusters, and networks pretty much interchangeably. Is that accurate, or is that your experience?
Oh, absolutely. They have a tendency to get lumped together, but there are definitely some differences between them all.
And that's why we're here really today, and to have this conversation with somebody with your experience, kind of give our listeners the opportunity to understand the differences between the three categories, if you will. And so I thought maybe we could start by digging a little deeper into each of the models, starting with discussing aggregators. So could you define that for our listeners and maybe explain what people should assume it means?
Yeah, aggregators, unlike a cluster, they may be aggregating several different markets that an agent would have, and they would likely need to join the aggregator. Sometimes the aggregator would have a vested interest in some or part of their agency. They're also required to have a certain amount of premium that's already written through a certain market in order to join. So an aggregator is generally unlikely to assist somebody that's new coming into the market, either somebody coming over from the captive side or somebody that is kind of dipping their toe into the independent space for the first time. So these are definitely more established organizations or agencies where the aggregator is really to look to roll the premium of a specific market into one kind of bucket, if you will, to establish an additional revenue from that particular market.
Got it. So I'm going to kind of jump a little bit here then, because based on that, can you talk a little bit about how that compares to the what we think of when we talk about clusters?
Yeah, a cluster it's kind of the same concept, but a little bit more localized and a little bit smaller, right? So an agency cluster is generally a group of agents that bring their individual books for a particular market to form a larger book. And this helps them establish a little bit of buying power, a little bit more clout. It can help improve profit sharing within that specific market. So one of the differentiators is generally a cluster is really limited to a specific market, where an aggregator, it's much broader than that. Much the aggregators a lot of the times can be more national type organizations, where a cluster is definitely more local or regionalized.
Gotcha. As opposed to, you said national, but like super regional maybe as well for an aggregator.
Yes, no question.
Okay. All right. So now, having defined those two, let's turn for a minute, if we could, to a network. And I'm just trying to get obviously the terminology out there so that we can kind of round out our conversation. And I'm going to take a moment here and talk about the fact that I know that SIAA some 28 years ago coined or originated the term alliance. And so I think that, and tell me if you agree or not, that the term alliance and network tend to be used interchangeably, and probably have some of the same components to them, if not all of them. How does that differentiate now or differ from the cluster and the aggregator?
Yeah, the network or alliance, I think you're right, Doug, in that they can be used interchangeably. I think from my standpoint, and I think if you look at us as well as our competitors out there that either alliances or networks, they do some of the things that an aggregator or a cluster may do, but they offer much more. So from an aggregator or a cluster standpoint, it's really about kind of combining the books of business to increase or improve the overall economics, where a network or an alliance offers much more. It's really more about the development of that particular or of a particular agency. There are more services that are available. So it may be marketing services, there may be consultation services that are affiliated with technology, could be learning and development, it could be a number of different initiatives, sales contests, a number of levels of support to the agencies that have joined to help them establish themselves in order to grow, in order to continue to evolve. And for some organizations, that may include either purchasing additional agencies or even succession planning. But the one thing that I would tell you, based upon my experience in working with certainly our recruiters, as well as knowing a lot of our competitors, that not all agency networks or alliances are created equal. There are some that are out there that will make the claim that they do certain things, offer some support, and there are some that just do it better than others. So there are some that are really ingrained and entrenched and make the investment to truly support their members. And there are other that leverage their relationships to be able to state that they do that, but the training or the technology services may come from a different place, even some of the carriers that they're working with.
Got it. So that as you're describing that, I'm thinking to myself, if an agent was looking at their options in terms of an aggregator, a cluster, or a network slash alliance, that the aggregator and cluster process, in terms of my thinking as an agent, would be pretty much pretty straightforward. But when I turn to the I guess, plethora of possibilities of offerings from a network or an alliance, that I might have to do a little bit more homework in terms of being able to differentiate among these.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, Doug. When I speak to some of our members or even some of the prospects that have either joined us or have gone elsewhere, they do need to do their own due diligence upfront to really getting a full understanding of what they're after, and is the value proposition from any of those organizations, including ours, are they deep enough to really meet the needs and to help the prospective member get to their goals quicker, or faster, or to a greater degree. Not all networks or alliances are created equal. There are some that are really more of an aggregator and have some services. So it's important, to your point, that anybody that's considering joining an alliance or a network, you have to do your homework. It's kind of interesting to me in that a lot of these people that are considering it, they have spent years and years teaching their clients that they shouldn't buy on price, that they really should focus on the overall value that they're going to receive by that relationship. And it's the same thing when somebody's looking at an alliance or a network. They really should look at every letter of the agreement. They should have a real understanding of the value proposition. They should also be paying attention to the way that the alliance or the network is working with them. Is it more about the alliance, or is it more about them and their particular goals, and a plan to be able to help them attain their goals? Well, one of the things that SIA does, and the way that we differentiate ourselves from some of our competitors, is that we take great pride in the fact that we have a national strength, a national presence, but we operate and execute on a local level. We literally have individuals, feet on the street, if you will, that are working exclusively hand in hand with our members to really identify what their goals, needs, and wants and desires are, and really kind of guiding them and directing them in different ways to be able to attain those goals.
Gotcha. So as you're saying that, it occurred to me that obviously insurance carriers, companies are a huge component of that whole relationship. And so, would you hazard a guess as to, do companies perceive each of these types of organizations differently?
I think that they walk a bit of a fine line, if you will, Doug. I think that they know that there are differences out there, that there are some organizations that offer greater degrees of service than others. And there are others that just do it better than other organizations. That being said, a lot of the carriers, they want to make sure that they're being equitable in the way that they treat a lot of their relationships. They have their own goals in terms of production and profitability and all of that. But I think that there are definitely some networks and alliances out there that have better relationships, and that may even translate into better deals because the quality of individuals that are now going to be representing or working with those companies products are better trained, are submitting higher quality business, are more informed. So, that's one aspect of an alliance or a network that somebody considering joining should consider
Right.
is that, do they have something in place where they are going to not only have a good relationship now, but in the future as well? And that means longevity, that means flexibility, and that certainly means the deal, right? I mean, if we're writing good business and we're reliably profitable for them and we have things in place that assist with that, the deals conceivably could be better.
Right. So I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking to myself that there's a list potentially of things that any agent seeking to join one of these organizations should probably be going through. But as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, you probably have some tips or thoughts about some of the things that agents going through this process should be looking for. You've identified a few. Are there some more that you would like to comment on? I'm just thinking about with networks. Naturally, there seems to be that some kind of agreement, whether that's a contract or a verbal agreement, whatever that might be. But there things that agents should be looking for or looking to understand thoroughly before joining a network or a cluster or an aggregator?
Yeah, it's a good question, Doug. I think for me, it all starts and ends with needs. I think that anybody that's considering joining an organization should really take a step back and really think about what they're looking to accomplish. It's not just about aggregating premium and getting more money. Any agency, regardless of where they are in their own evolution or their own journey, has needs. They have needs now, and they have needs that are going to occur in the future. So when they're considering joining an alliance, a network, a cluster, or whatever it might be, they should really think about what are the specific needs that they have now and what are their goals in the future. And does that organization have the infrastructure in place to be able to help that agency attain those particular goals? And there are things that some of the agencies may not think of, even for those individuals that are coming over from a captive environment. They recognize that, hey, I want to be able to offer a broader um, menu of solutions for my clients. But some of the things that they may not be considering is the technology. Do I have somebody that I can go to that is going to provide me with guidance on my initial tech stack so I can actually run my business effectively and efficiently? And one of the things that's really great about SIAA is that we have a very astute and adept IT department that keeps their finger on the pulse of the industry in terms of technology, in terms of what's the leading or most effective technology now, but also what are those technologies that are coming down the pike that may offer additional efficiency and effectiveness for our members. And you could make the same claim about our training and learning center or our dedication to helping people get into the commercial line space, book management, marketing. We have a number of things in place that, regardless of those needs that our members have or our prospective members have, we have things in place to be able to help them.
Gotcha. So, that being said, and understanding that this is a process both in terms of the upfront preparation, but then even once coming to a conclusion or actually joining an organization, what kind of commitment should most agents be thinking in terms of when they join one of these organizations?
I think that their biggest commitment, I almost akin it to a health club. You have somebody that has the best of intentions and looks to improve their overall situation by joining a health club. And that health club may have a number of different features and benefits to help them attain their own personal goals.
Yeah,
But it's really what that member or what that individual is going to utilize, what plan they have in place, how committed they are to leveraging those tools to be able to experience their true potential and that improvement. So you could even go back into the differences between the clusters, aggregators, alliances, and networks. And even if, it's two, networks or alliances, and you want to look at that health club in terms of what are the services that an individual might need, where one might claim that they're a full service organization, but may have things where they're referring you out, where another organization may have an in house nutritionist, may have in house trainers that can help you with the machines and the specific things that you're looking to accomplish. So, you can kind of make that connection. But to your question, it's really all about their member and them utilizing the services that are available to them so they maximize the benefit of being a member. They have as much skin in the game as the network or the alliance does.
gotcha. And that does make some sense. I as I think that through, I also think about the fact that when you join your analogy, when I join that health club, I can get some pretty quick benefits from it, but I think that there's a longer term commitment in terms of the time frame, even though, in order to get to my maximum health benefit. Is that also true when it comes to joining a network?
I wholeheartedly agree, Doug, in that there are certainly some situations where people have that initial benefit, and maybe they lose focus, or maybe they're not quite sure of what else is there available, so they have that initial impact, but they don't take full advantage of the opportunities before them. Again, I think one of the really great things about SIAA is that we have things in place for an agency at every point in their evolution or their journey. We pay close attention to not only those people that are first coming into the independent space, but what do they look like when they hit a certain premium or revenue amount? What do they look like when they're at 3 to 5 years or 5 to 7 years? Those needs are going to continue to change.
Right.
And going back to the health club analogy, do they have things in place to be able to not only give you that initial impact, but also as you progress, as you have different goals, maybe you have a change in health, that requires you to use different aspects of the membership. Do they have the things in place to be able to help you over the long term? And that's one of the things that we have here, is that at every point in that journey, we can provide assistance, support, growth, efficiency. We've been doing it for 30 years, and probably going to be doing it for at least another 30.
Well, it's funny because as you say that, I'm thinking to myself that when I join a health club, and this has happened to me over the years, can you believe it? That I've joined a health club, and then for whatever reason, within a couple of years, they go out of business. So, is that something that as an insurance agent I should be thinking about as well when I join a network?
Yeah, you know what, Doug? It's funny. In the past, I've looked at the way that SIA has been perceived in the marketplace has been around for a long time, and kind of big and bold, and kind of chest thumping, and there's been times where I've been like, I wish our message were a little bit different, but looking at the market today, you have to take a fresh look at an organization like SIAA with the longevity that we've had, with the strength and the size that we are. If you're looking as somebody that's getting into the independent space and looking to join an alliance or a network, you want to make sure that they're going to be there in 3 years or 5 years or 7 years. And even though we may have been criticized in terms of our model and the way that we're structured for our members, the test of time has proved that it works. It works for our members and it works for us. And there have been changes in the marketplace where there have been either smaller organizations or organizations with a different economic structure that have suffered, and some of them have had to close up shop. And there are others that maybe they haven't closed up shop, but maybe they've actually had to cut back on the services and benefits that they offer.
Right. Right. So that is obviously, I think, as with any organization that anyone does business with, that is something that should be kept in mind as you go through the decision-making process, that you want to do business with somebody who is going to be here as you grow, as you improve, as you do your thing, and they do what they do to help you in that process.
Yeah, you know what? Much like the members that we serve, when they're working with their clients and they're considering placing a piece of business, and they're evaluating the carriers, they're looking at certainly price, and they're looking at the product and the underwriting philosophy and that type of thing. But they also want to make sure that they're putting them with a carrier that has stability and has longevity. And it's the same thing. It's really kind of an interesting thing in terms of how things kind of trickle down to an agency's clients, and then we actually kind of trickle up into a network or an alliance. It kind of goes in a multi-directional way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes sense when you stop and think about it. I want to make sure that we touch on something that I'm sure is on a lot of listeners' minds, and not something that we necessarily talk about a lot. But I think folks think about, well, if I join one of these, whatever it might be, an aggregator, cluster, network, SIA or not, and the time it comes for me down the road when I want to exit that membership or that participation. Is that something that is fairly standard across the board in terms of how somebody does that?
Well, it should be standard in terms of the agency or the individual that's looking to join an alliance or network, in that they should be doing their due diligence regardless. And they should clearly understand the overall value proposition. But to your point, what happens when I actually want to leave? If I get to that point where I want to sell or retire, I mean, one of the things that I say to prospects and even some of our recruiters is, look, these individuals, they're not going to be in their agency forever. At some point, they may perpetuate, they may retire, something else may occur. So it's something that they should consider. And one of the things that I have found, just when we've run into competitive situations, it surprises me that there are individuals out there, agency owners, whatever it might be, that don't look closely at the overall value proposition, don't look at the agreement, and they may make an assumption that I'm going to go with this relationship because they don't have, what you might call a deferred investment, right? They don't think that they have to pay something, but what they neglect to understand, that there may be a non-compete that could conceivably put them out of business.
Right. Right.
So they have to have a real understanding of what it takes to get in, but they should also have a clear understanding in terms of what happens when they want to get out. And sometimes that can be very clear. And sometimes they have to do a little bit of digging. And sometimes that there are definitely organizations out there that probably don't emphasize that aspect as much as they should, or as clear as they should be.
Right. And I think it's important that folks do keep that in mind as they go through the process, as you say, as part of the due diligence, not just understanding what it's going to take to get into the game, so to speak, but what is it going to take when the time comes that you want to exit. So
We have run into many situations where agencies have expressed in a desire to leave an existing relationship that they have, only to find that they are completely locked in.
Wow.
So even though they may not be getting the level of service that they had expected, or maybe they're not getting the economic benefit that they think that they have, some of these agreements are structured in such a way that it's very, very difficult for them to leave that organization.
Yeah. It's definitely something for agents to keep in mind as they look around. Um, I'm keeping my eye on the time. I want to make sure I give you an opportunity to touch on anything relative to the aggregators, clusters, networks slash alliances that we have not talked about to this point. Any tidbits you might offer to an agent who's contemplating their next move or their move into one of these types of organizations?
Yeah, I mean, for me, if I were in the shoes of an agency owner and I was interested in making that type of move, I think it's important for them to really take their time to understand what they may be getting into. I think as we've talked about over the past 20 minutes or so, is that there can be real variations and differences amongst not all aggregators, networks, or even clusters are viewed as equal. They're not all equal. Some are stronger than others in different areas. The one thing that I will continue to go back to, and I don't think that people do it enough, is to really focus on what you're looking to accomplish, what your particular needs are. I mean, I even look at it in our situation from an SIA standpoint. We certainly run into people that, look, if you're just looking to aggregate premium, fine. There are 100 places where you can do that. But if you're looking to get some additional support, an enhancement of your organization, an enhancement of your staff, where you have the best access to carriers, some of the best economic and commissions and variable compensation, even guaranteed compensation in the business. But if you're also looking for learning opportunities, development opportunities, technology support, marketing support, we are a full service organization that can really accelerate the growth of an organization and really help them along the way. And I think that it's still, even for us, it all comes down to, and even all of the recruiters out there, the first thing that they focus on is the needs of that particular individual in that agency.
Sure. And that I think that makes a lot of sense. I would I guess one last thing I comes to mind that I think that is worth talking about just for a moment is transparency, and I think that it's important that, I guess I'm looking for you to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it's important that at the outset that the agent who's having the conversation and the organization with whom or with which they're having that conversation are transparent with each other, and I'm just not sure that that always is the case. And so I would be interested in getting your thoughts on that.
No, you're right. And it can vary not only by organization, but also by, the salesperson or the recruiters, whatever you want to term them as, that is having those conversations. There are some that, very innocently will make the assumption that the agency owner that's considering it has a full understanding of what they're getting into. I think that it's important that when somebody is going through their due diligence, that they, take the time to understand what they're getting into, and they should be asking a lot of questions of the individual that they're working with, so they do have full clarity. To your question, Doug, there are and have been many, many situations, as I had indicated, where people have said, "Hey, you know what? We feel like we're not getting the level of service that we are with our existing organization. We want to come over to SIAA." We can't really help them because they're so tied into a commitment that they've made, not realizing or recognizing that they're kind of stuck where they're at. So, one of the things that I think that our recruiters and our organization does very well is to provide that transparency and clarity. We want people to have a full understanding of what they're thinking about getting into. And if for whatever reason they feel like it's not a fit, that's fine. We would much rather have individuals sign up and stay with us for as long as they want to stay with us, instead of just getting somebody in and having them leave in the first 6 months or whatever it might be, because we've misrepresented the level of service that we're providing.
Got it. And that makes all the sense in the world. Okay, well, keeping my eye on the clock, Jack, I want to say thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your time and your expertise.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again. Letting everybody know that our guest today has been Jack Calabrese, Senior Vice President of Recruiting and Sales at SIAA. And I want to thank everyone for joining us on Insurance Agents Talk Shop. I'm Doug Coombs, Chief Marketing Officer at SIAA. If you liked the conversation, please subscribe to our show. And if you want to learn more about SIAA, the Agent Alliance, please visit SIAA.com. Thank you, folks. Have a great one.